October 2023. My girlfriend Emma and I desperately needed a break from our hectic jobs in Chicago. We'd been working nonstop for months, and when I stumbled across this secluded cabin rental deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, it seemed perfect. The listing promised complete privacy, surrounded by ancient forest, perfect for digital detox. The photos showed a rustic but cozy log cabin with a wraparound porch, nestled so deep in the woods you couldn't see another building for miles. We booked it for a long weekend in late October, thinking we'd finally found the perfect escape. The drive took us through increasingly remote mountain roads, each turn taking us further from civilization. Cell service had been spotty for the last hour, but we didn't mind. That was exactly what we wanted. As evening approached and shadows grew longer between the massive oak and pine trees, we finally spotted the narrow dirt road that led to our cabin. The place was exactly as advertised, a beautiful log structure that looked like it had been there for decades, maybe longer. Smoke was already rising from the chimney, which the host had mentioned they'd have ready for us. The surrounding forest was so dense that even in daylight, it created this perpetual twilight around the cabin. Emma was immediately charmed by how peaceful everything felt. We carried our bags inside, opened a bottle of wine, and settled in by the fireplace. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders relax. The next morning, we decided to explore the area. The host had mentioned a small general store about 15 minutes down the mountain where we could grab supplies. It was one of those classic mountain stores, creaky wooden floors, shelves packed with random stuff, and an elderly man behind the counter who looked like he'd been there since the 1970s. But something felt off the moment we walked in. The old man looked up from his newspaper, and his expression immediately changed when he saw us. Not unfriendly exactly, but definitely wary. When I mentioned we were staying at the cabin up on Ridge Road, he just stared at us for a long moment. "That's so," he finally said, not really a question. "How long you folks planning on staying?" "Just until Monday," Emma replied cheerfully, but I noticed the man didn't smile back. We grabbed some groceries and basic supplies, but the whole time I felt like he was watching us. When we checked out, he handed me the receipt and said, "Y'all might want to keep your curtains drawn at night. Gets mighty dark up there." It was such a strange thing to say that Emma and I talked about it on the drive back. Why would we need to keep curtains drawn in the middle of nowhere? But we laughed it off as just local mountain weirdness. That night, things started getting strange. We'd been sitting by the fire, playing cards and enjoying the complete silence of the forest when we lost power. Not just the lights, everything. The refrigerator stopped humming, the heater went quiet, even our phones couldn't find any signal at all. We figured it was just a temporary outage, maybe weather-related, so we lit some candles and made the best of it. Around midnight we heard it, a slow, deliberate knocking on the front door. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause. Emma and I looked at each other, frozen. Who would be out here at midnight? And how would they have even found this place in the dark? I grabbed a flashlight and went to the door, but when I called out, "Who's there?" there was no response. Just silence. I waited a few minutes and tried again. Nothing. When I finally opened the door, no one was there. But there, sitting on the porch right in front of the door, was a small bundle of sticks tied together with what looked like black string. It was arranged in this weird geometric pattern that made my skin crawl just looking at it. Emma came up behind me and saw it too. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. I kicked it off the porch and locked the door. We decided to go to bed, but neither of us slept well. Around 3 a.m. we heard footsteps on the porch, slow, heavy footsteps that circled the entire cabin. They'd start at the front door, go around to the right side, across the back, around the left side, and back to the front. Then they'd pause for exactly 60 seconds and start again. This went on for over an hour. We lay there in bed, holding hands, listening to someone or something walking circles around our cabin in the middle of the night. Emma wanted to call 911, but our phones still had no signal. When morning finally came, the footsteps stopped, and we found strange symbols scratched into the dirt all around the cabin's foundation. The power came back that afternoon, but our phones still couldn't connect to anything. No calls, no internet, no GPS. It was like we'd been completely cut off from the outside world. We drove back to the general store to ask about using their landline, but when we walked in, that same old man looked at us like he'd never seen us before. "Can we use your phone?" I asked. "We're having trouble with cell service up at the cabin." He just stared at us for the longest time, then said, "Don't have a phone." But I could clearly see an old rotary phone sitting right behind the counter. When I pointed it out, he followed my gaze, looked back at us and said, "That don't work." Emma tried asking about the strange symbols around our cabin, but he just shook his head and turned away. It was like he was deliberately not helping us, or maybe he was scared to help us. That second night was when things got truly terrifying. We decided to leave early the next morning, but we had to get through one more night. Around 10 p.m., while we were getting ready for bed, Emma screamed from the bathroom. I ran in to find her staring at the mirror above the sink. "Look," she whispered, pointing at the reflection. In the mirror, behind our reflections, there was a figure standing in the doorway, tall, dark, completely motionless. But when I spun around to look at the actual doorway, nothing was there, just empty space. But in the mirror, that figure was still there, now seeming to move closer. We ran out of the bathroom and spent the rest of the night huddled together on the couch by the fireplace, too terrified to go back into any room with a mirror or window. Every few hours, we'd hear those same deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. Sometimes they were joined by what sounded like whispers, too quiet to make out the words, but definitely human voices. Around 4 a.m., all the sounds stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Emma was crying quietly, and I was trying to figure out how we were going to get through the next few hours until daylight. That's when we heard it, a voice, clear as day, calling from right outside the front door. "We know you're in there." Not shouting, not threatening, just matter of fact, like someone making a simple statement. Emma gripped my arm so hard it left bruises. The voice came again, "Come outside, we just want to talk." We didn't move, we didn't breathe. We just sat there as still as possible until the sun finally started coming up. The moment there was enough light to see, we threw everything into our car and got the hell out of there. We didn't bother checking out properly, didn't try to get any explanations, didn't even care about getting our deposit back. We just drove straight home to Chicago without stopping. Later, I tried researching the area online, looking for any history that might explain what we'd experienced. I found some old local newspaper articles about missing hikers in that region, and some forum posts from other people who'd had strange experiences in those mountains. But nothing concrete, nothing that would hold up if we tried to report it to anyone. We never found out who was circling our cabin those nights, or what those symbols meant, or why the people in town seemed so reluctant to help us. We never went back to find out. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, especially when you're lucky enough to walk away from them. March 2023. I just wrapped up my spring semester and was completely burned out from finals. I needed to get away from campus for a few days, somewhere I could just decompress and clear my head. After browsing Airbnb for hours, I stumbled across this gem, a 2-bedroom apartment in Santa Barbara, clean, affordable, and just 3 blocks from the beach. The photos looked incredible, reviews were great, and the price seemed too good to be true for such a prime location. The listing said entire place, which was perfect. I wanted complete privacy to just chill out, maybe binge some shows and listen to the ocean. I booked it instantly for a long weekend, thinking I'd found the perfect escape. What I didn't know was that I was about to share this entire place with someone who definitely wasn't on the lease. Someone who would casually stroll in at midnight like he owned the joint. The apartment was exactly what the photos promised. Clean, minimalist, with a decent-sized balcony that overlooked the street. There were 2 bedrooms. The master had a proper bed and nice furniture, while the second room looked more like storage space with just an air mattress on the floor and some plastic storage bins stacked in the corner. I figured the host probably used it for extra stuff, or maybe occasional guests. First impressions were solid. The neighborhood was super quiet. There was a Whole Foods practically next door, and I could actually hear the waves crashing when I opened the balcony door. I spent that first afternoon walking around downtown, grabbed coffee at this cute local spot, and picked up some groceries. By evening, I was feeling more relaxed than I had in months. This was exactly what I needed. I settled in for the night around 10 p.m., feeling completely at peace. The stress from school was already melting away, but that peaceful feeling was about to get completely shattered. I'd been asleep for maybe 2 hours when I heard it, the distinct sound of keys jingling outside the front door, followed by the unmistakable click of a lock turning. My eyes shot open. Someone was definitely coming into the apartment. My heart started pounding as I heard footsteps moving casually through the living room, then into the kitchen. These weren't rushed or sneaky footsteps. They were relaxed, like whoever it was belonged there. I grabbed my phone to check the time, 11:52 p.m. Then I heard the kitchen faucet turn on. Someone was getting a drink of water, in my rental, at midnight. I lay there completely frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. Did I forget to lock the door? Was there some kind of emergency? Was the host checking on something? But none of those explanations fit with someone just casually walking around getting water like they lived there. The footsteps moved toward the second bedroom, the one with the air mattress. I heard a door close softly, and then everything went quiet. But I knew someone was in there, 20 feet away from me. I didn't sleep another second that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening for any sound, jumping at every little creak the building made. When morning finally came, I heard movement in the kitchen again. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone just in case, and went to see who the hell was in my rental. There he was, a guy who looked maybe 23 or 24, standing at the counter eating cereal like this was the most normal thing in the world. He was average height, brown hair, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt like he'd just woken up. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised or embarrassed at all. "Oh, hey there," he said casually, not even pausing with his cereal. "You must be the Airbnb person. I'm Ben. I'll probably head out before noon, just needed a place to crash." I stood there completely speechless. He just kept eating while I tried to process what was happening. Finally, I managed to get words out. I rented the entire place. The listing specifically said entire apartment. Ben shrugged like this was no big deal. "Yeah, I know. I just stay here sometimes when I need to. Sarah, she's the host. She's cool with it. Usually nobody's here anyway, so it works out." I immediately pulled up the Airbnb listing on my phone, scrolling through it frantically. It clearly stated entire apartment, with absolutely no mention of anyone else staying there. No mention of Ben, no mention of shared space, nothing about other people having keys. "Look, don't stress about it," Ben said, putting his bowl in the sink. "I'll be gone in a few hours. You won't even know I was here." But I already knew he was here, and I had absolutely no idea how to handle this situation. That second night, I didn't even try to sleep. I dragged a chair from the kitchen and wedged it under my bedroom door handle, then sat there fully dressed, checking my phone every few minutes. I'd sent multiple messages to Sarah, the host, but hadn't heard anything back. Every tiny sound in the apartment made me jump. Was that Ben moving around? Was someone else coming in? How many people had keys to this place? The whole situation felt surreal. Ben never came out of his room, not once. No bathroom breaks, no getting water, nothing. It was like he wasn't even there, which somehow made it even more unsettling. What was he doing in there? Why was he so silent? I kept going back and forth between feeling genuinely unsafe and wondering if I was totally overreacting. Like, what would I even tell the police? There's a guy sleeping in my Airbnb who ate my cereal. The next morning, I was exhausted and on edge. Still no response from Sarah. I started quietly packing my stuff, hoping to avoid another awkward encounter with Ben. But as I was folding clothes, I heard his door open. He walked to the bathroom like he owned the place, then came back out and just stood in the living room for a minute. Here's what was weird. He hadn't touched anything else in the apartment. The couch looked exactly the same, the TV hadn't been moved, nothing in the kitchen was different except for that one bowl he'd used. For someone who claimed he sometimes stayed here, he sure didn't act comfortable using any of the common areas. I finally worked up the courage to ask what had been eating at me. "Does Sarah actually know you're staying here?" Ben looked at me for a long moment without saying anything. His expression was completely unreadable, not defensive, not guilty, just blank. Then, without a word, he grabbed a jacket from the second bedroom and walked straight out the front door. The way he looked at me before leaving gave me chills. It wasn't anger or annoyance. It was something much colder, like I was the one who didn't belong there. Around noon, I finally got a text from Sarah. "Oh, Ben? Yeah, he crashes there sometimes when he needs a place. He's totally harmless, don't worry about it." I couldn't believe what I was reading. I immediately called her, my hands literally shaking with anger. "You can't just have random people staying here without telling guests," I said. "I paid for the entire place. This is completely unacceptable and probably illegal." Sarah seemed genuinely confused by my reaction. "Ben's a friend of mine. He's super quiet and clean. I honestly didn't think it would be an issue." An issue? A complete stranger had been sleeping 20 feet away from me for 2 nights, and she didn't think that was worth mentioning? I hung up on her, immediately contacted Airbnb support, and started throwing everything into my suitcase. All I could think about was how vulnerable I'd been that first night, sleeping peacefully, while some random guy I'd never met had keys to where I was staying. Airbnb ended up refunding my entire stay and removed Sarah's listing after I filed a detailed complaint. The support representative told me I wasn't the first guest to report problems with undisclosed occupants at her properties, which was both validating and terrifying. But here's what really keeps me up at night. I kept checking Airbnb over the next few weeks, and Sarah keeps popping up with new listings. Different apartments, different addresses, but same host photo and same casual attitude in her profile description. I can't stop wondering, does Ben still show up at these new places? Are there other college students right now, lying in bed at some random apartment, hearing those same footsteps and keys at midnight? How many people has Sarah put in this exact situation? And how many Bens are out there with keys to places where unsuspecting travelers think they're staying alone? I'll never book an Airbnb by myself again. That experience taught me that entire place doesn't always mean what you think it means, and some hosts have a very different definition of transparency than the rest of us. I still don't know if Ben was actually Sarah's friend, or if she even knew he had keys. All I know is that I spent 2 nights feeling completely unsafe in a place I'd paid to feel secure. So here's my question for you. What would you have done if a stranger walked into your rental at midnight and acted like he belonged there? Would you have called the police immediately? Confronted him? Or would you have done what I did and spent the whole weekend wondering if you were safe? Have you ever looked into a mirror at midnight and felt like something was off? Not just bad lighting or weird shadows, but the actual feeling that someone was staring back at you from the other side of that glass. This story happened during what was supposed to be the most relaxing weekend getaway of my year. I'd booked this old cabin up in the mountains, just trying to escape the city noise for a few days. But some things, they never really let you escape, and I learned that the hard way. I'm Jake, 28, working at a tech startup downtown. Work stress had been killing my sleep for months, so I decided to book this cabin I found on Airbnb up in the Rockies. The price was pretty cheap for the location. Should have been my first red flag, honestly. The cabin was built back in the 1960s, classic mountain style with dark wood beams that had faded over the decades. There was this faint smell of old wood mixed with pine from the surrounding forest. Wind whistling through the gaps in the doors created this constant creaking sound, like the heartbeat of something ancient and tired. The master bedroom had this huge antique mirror positioned right across from the bed, ornate wooden frame that was beautiful but clearly showing its age. Yellow light from this old bedside lamp reflected dimly on the mirror's surface, casting these weird, shifting shadows. I dropped my bags, feeling the October chill seeping through the whole space. The first night, I actually slept pretty deep after weeks of insomnia back in the city. But around 3 a.m., I woke up with this feeling like someone had been calling my name. Soft voice, definitely female, coming from somewhere in the room. Jake, Jake. I sat up, looking around. The room was pitch black, except for some moonlight sneaking through the curtains. Probably just exhaustion and the new environment messing with my head. But when I lay back down, I caught a glimpse of that mirror. The reflection of the room looked different somehow. Couldn't put my finger on what exactly, just felt wrong. The lighting seemed darker, and there was this blurry dark spot in the corner of the mirror that I couldn't quite make out. I flicked on the lamp to check. Everything looked normal. Just tired, I told myself, and went back to sleep. Night 2, things got way more obvious. This time I couldn't sleep at all, just lying there tossing and turning with this constant feeling that someone was watching me. The anxiety got so bad I had to sit up. That's when I saw it clearly. In the mirror, in the right corner, there was this faint dark shape moving around. It wasn't reflecting anything actually in the room. I turned to look at the corresponding corner. Nothing there. But in the mirror, that shadow was still there, and it seemed to be getting closer. My heart started pounding like crazy. I turned on the light. Shadow disappeared. Turned it off. There it was again. This time I could make out more details. It was the shape of a woman, wearing what looked like a white dress, long hair hanging down. She was standing completely still, but I had this overwhelming sense that she was staring directly at me. I sat there until sunrise, too scared to turn off the light. When morning came, everything went back to normal. But that uneasy feeling haunted me all day long. Third night, I decided to face whatever this was head on. I kept the lights off, lay flat on my back, and stared directly at that mirror. Around 2 a.m., the dark shape appeared again, but this time it was crystal clear. The woman in the mirror had this pale white face with pitch black eyes looking straight into mine. She wasn't standing in the corner anymore. She'd moved right up to the glass, just a few feet away from me. Long black hair cascaded over her shoulders, and this old white dress seemed to flutter like there was a breeze. Jake, her voice echoed clearly through the silent room. I've been waiting for you for so long. I couldn't move. My throat felt completely blocked, heart beating so hard I thought it might explode. The woman in the mirror raised her hand and pressed it against the glass from her side. And here's the terrifying part. The mirror actually started showing wet handprints, like she was really touching it. "Do you remember me?" she asked, her voice shifting from gentle to bitter with resentment. "I died in this room 20 years ago, because of you, because you left me." The temperature in the room dropped instantly. My breath started forming white clouds in the air. There was this crushing pressure on my chest, making it hard to breathe. And then, she started stepping out of the mirror. I screamed and bolted from the bed, running straight outside without looking back. In the darkness, I drove down to town and found a motel for the night. Next morning, I went back only to grab my stuff and check out early. But driving back to the city, her words kept echoing in my head. "I'll follow you, wherever you go." When I got home, I thought it was all over. I told my friends about it, and they all figured I'd just been hallucinating from stress. Maybe they were right. The first few days back home, everything seemed normal. I almost forgot about that creaky old cabin in the mountains. Until I realized the mirror in my own bedroom was starting to show those same strange signs. I looked up the cabin online and found out the terrifying truth. Back in 2003, a young woman had killed herself in that room after her boyfriend cheated on her. She'd hanged herself right in front of that mirror, and apparently lots of guests since then had reported weird experiences. But what sent chills down my spine wasn't just that story. It was when I saw the girl's photo in an old news article. Her face looked exactly like my ex-girlfriend. The girl I'd broken up with 5 years ago, who was also named Sarah. Last week, I dreamed about her again. But this time, she wasn't in the mirror anymore. She was standing right at the foot of my bed. So if you ever dream about a woman in a white dress standing at the end of your bed tonight, don't turn around.